So our next speaker is someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years here, was actually introduced to by Jeff Ekman, one of our moderators here at the event. David Edelman is the global co-leader of McKinsey Digital Marketing and Sales. Again, it sounds like you kind of got the most interesting collection of stuff there. He's written just a tremendous number of articles. I've heard him speak at some number of events where his focus on digital transformation, one of the things I've just always admired about the way he tackles the subject is the emphasis on the transformation in digital transformation. So please welcome David Edelman.
About a year ago, I found myself in a windowless conference room in northern New Jersey, facing a client of mine named Tom. And Tom was pretty nervous. His whole world was starting to get turned upside down. And the reason for that was because Tom was the chief marketing officer of the leading provider of industrial lighting products. Now, you may think industrial lighting, that's not an industry that's going to get my heart racing. But actually, there's an enormous amount going on in industrial lighting. And it's mainly because of LEDs. Light-emitting diodes are completely changing the nature of how, for hotels, for retail, anywhere, people think about lighting. LEDs change the equation not just because they're more energy efficient, but because they actually change the fundamental way you think of lighting design. And we see this now. We see it in the taillights of cars. We see it in whole new kinds of store designs and billboards, and could even see it in the design of a narcissist's office. And as you look at this and realize the design possibilities, you also have to think about the way these whole projects get to be made. And from a selling perspective for lighting, the fact that all of these lighting projects are becoming design cases changes the whole way that lighting is sold and bought. So historically, Tom would mostly sell through distributors. There were all kinds of lighting distributors, industrial product distributors all over the country. And they would mostly sell to construction managers who would be buying specific lights in bulk for their projects, mostly focusing on cost, on certain clear energy parameters, and on making sure all the deliveries and everything were incredibly smooth. But now it's changing, because now the real buyers for lights are way more upstream. Architects and lighting designers have now captured the decision-making for buying lights. And by the time they deal with a distributor, the decision's already made. They already have an incredibly clear idea of what they want. So Tom had to completely rethink his whole marketing and sales approach. His customer has changed. The nature of how people thought about the products have changed. And of course, with online channels, all of these architects and lighting designers could learn about these products endlessly before they even walk into any kind of distributor. And he had to start intersecting with these buyers at a whole different point in their journey. He had to understand the journey. He had to understand what were the real battleground moments when decisions were going to be made. And ideally, he'd have to shape that decision journey. He'd want to co-opt it and make sure that along the way, these folks were seeing and engaging with his products and getting pulled into an experience that made them more educated about the design possibilities that Tom's company offered than about the competition. The problem was there wasn't really a lot of data. At the moment, none of the lighting providers really had websites that had that much data, so as you started poking around with clickstream data and looking at public sources, there really wasn't a lot out there. And that's the case in a lot of B2B markets, where you may think, oh, we should be able to go after the data. But in reality, you got to get out and talk to people. You've got to go and actually get the story. So we went out and we spoke to about 50 different lighting designers and architects. And what we learned was they were out there online, and they were in all kinds of social forums. There were about 8 different kinds of social forums that were out there where there was an incredible amount of discussion about lighting. People were asking questions, people were posting case studies, people were trying to get all kinds of parametric information from each other. And the amazing thing was there were no manufacturers involved in those discussions. It was all people who were in the market talking to each other. So there was a tremendous opportunity to jump in and start helping those conversations, to do it in a way that wasn't blatant, that wasn't obnoxious, but factual. Actually giving people information, because our client had the information often, answers. They had examples of installations, they had facts, they had figures. So they set up a whole social media SWAT team. Wasn't a lot of people in the market where they started doing this. It was about 4 people. They were armed with technology that allowed them to scan the conversations going on. There was a lot of testing and learning of different kinds of ways of engaging people, what kind of contact, what were the right triggers, and where should we lead them to. So the second part, besides getting out there and engaging in the conversations, was pulling them into some kind of rerouting of their journey. So in order to shape that journey, they had to rethink the whole notion of their website. And their website, like many business-to-business websites, was essentially designed to be a catalog. Here's all of our stuff. And if you knew the part number you wanted, even better, you could go straight and order that part number. But that's not what people want anymore. They want to browse. They want to learn about things. So the whole site had to be completely redesigned around the journey that the market really wanted. And what they wanted was to see case studies, stories that helped them get inspired and get ideas. So the site was redesigned in order to focus on case studies, which would be mostly the landing pages, that then you can drill down. What are the products? What are the photometric parameters? And then also click to talk to somebody, which they didn't really have before. So they set up an inside sales support team focused on the web. Wherever leads came in, they had people who were trained to be able to answer more questions, provide more content, and then they would hand those people off to distributors who cooperated in this whole lead flow by letting the OEM know that somebody had actually, in the end, bought a lighting product. And so they created a preferential list of distributors whom they would route traffic to. They knew they had to support the distributors. They didn't want to get into the direct sales business. So one of the things that they also did was help the distributors get their own act together digitally. And all of the distributors had some kind of apps. There's an amazing number of B2B apps out there. And when you look at lighting, here's a whole bunch of them, where the distributors give their customers access to an app so that they can place orders, track orders, get immediate information. The challenge was that a lot of the information in these apps was old, wasn't necessarily the latest stuff from a manufacturer. So our clients set up a whole publishing content management system where all of the latest product information, all the parametric information, everything was constantly pumped out into the apps of the distributors. So they set up with APIs to be able to always be the ones with the most updated information in the apps, so that whenever customers needed information on the spot, they always knew that our client's information would be the most updated. It was always accurate, always the latest thing that they saw, always linked actually back to the case study examples that were on the site. So it made it all one more seamless experience. And then after somebody bought, the distributors would give the information actually back to the OEM, because that's how the distributors were going to be fed leads coming out of the OEM's marketing. And then the OEM established a whole stream of post-sales experiences involving getting people who were doing lighting to post case studies, and they gave them publicity, made them famous by showing off cool lighting designs and talking about it. They offered after-hours support. They had forums that they hosted where people could talk to some of the designers, and they put some of those designers out there and marketed them as if they were hot personalities. And they completely changed their whole relationship to the market, which led to a growth in sales above plan of 25%, just a significant increase in growth. They've done this now in one country. They're expanding it across the world. And it has completely changed the way they think about customer management, about the flow of a customer's journey, and their role in trying to shape that journey going forward. They're not just selling stuff. They're actually shaping the way somebody is thinking about buying the category and influencing it to their advantage. So let's dig in a little deeper and understand the role that marketing technology, since that's what we're talking about here, plays in all of this, but also at the same time, the kinds of changes in the way the company operates that helps them take advantage of all of these capabilities. Because it's not just about the technology, it is increasingly also about the process, the operation, and the organization. So first off, from a strategic standpoint, the big shift in mindset was moving from supporting promotions at the point of sale at the distributor to actually thinking about the whole customer journey. If you followed any of the writings that McKinsey has done, you've probably seen this icon of the customer decision journey. It's not rocket science, never claimed it was. It's just a simple way of laying out the more iterative process that consumers go through as they're thinking about shopping, especially a somewhat considered category. And I'll just take a moment to go through it. At 9 o'clock, somebody is in the market. Something triggers them being in the market, and they have certain brands that they are considering at the start. They may be triggered by advertising that they see. I do a lot of work in cosmetics. They could run out of face cream. Could be that they have a project that they're just starting to design for some kind of installation. Then they evaluate. They go online. They talk to people. They go in stores. They check out what's there. And as they evaluate, new brands come in that they never thought about before. And in fact, usually a few brands fall out and new brands come in. And evaluate is one of the key new pivot points that did not exist really before digital media, where you can actually dramatically shift the momentum of somebody's thinking. Then they decide to buy. But it's not just a question of buying something. It's a question of what to buy, where to buy, how to configure what you buy, how much you want to pay for what you buy, who has to be with you when you buy. Buying is actually a more and more complicated decision. After you buy, you get it, you experience it. You may have issues where you need to get service. If that goes well, you'll advocate, you'll give a good rating, you may rant against things, and that content that you create becomes the fodder for other people's consideration and evaluation. So there's a whole cycle to that, and if it really goes well, you'll actually bond with a particular company, let them send you emails, you'll download their app, you'll sign up for Facebook, and you'll be in what we call the loyalty loop on the bottom. And this isn't, again, it's not a question of a whole new way of thinking of rocket science, but it is a question of being more disciplined and thinking about all the steps in the journey and how you're guiding someone through, and where are you spending money, and how is that money being spent relative to the battlegrounds that matter. And so for the lighting company, for them, it was really important to think through what are the journeys, Who are the different segments, and how can we shape them, and what does that mean for the way we spend and build capabilities? So for example, one of the key things they did not have before was the inside sales capability to handle leads that were coming in through the web, where someone could just click and talk to somebody. I mean, that hadn't been in the way they were thinking about marketing, yet that's a more downstream point in the journey that they needed to own. And so they had to spend money to go against that. So the next part in terms of strategy is thinking about that heat map. So where, for different segments, are the key points in that journey where it really is going to make a difference how you play? This is an example from a discount clothing retailer who I've done a fair amount of work with. And so they've got about 10 different segments of customers that they think about who are all very different in the way they shop. So for example, one segment, but not for me, are women who shop at this discount retailer for their husbands, for their kids, but not for themselves. It's not good enough for themselves. The husband, kids, they can get the discount stuff, but not me. So they have to get her to cross the aisle and get her to shop, which is totally different than an in-store loyalist, right? So there's a totally different way you think about the heat map. And so as you go across the different steps in the journey, you start to see different priorities for where you need to emphasize your investment. An in-store loyalist, you want to get to advocate. You want her to tell others about it, to bring friends, and to really get even more committed to the brand. Whereas the but not for me, you've got to get her to consider you as a place to shop for herself and get her to cross the aisle. And so there's different emphases that you'll focus on as you think about different segments. But doing all of this requires a way of operating that is much faster paced and much more experimental than ever before. I think one of the great breakthrough concepts in Scott's book on hacking marketing is thinking about the application of agile into marketing. And having done this with many clients, it's really important to rethink the whole operations to be able to do more testing in a faster mode. Because when you look across that kind of heat map, the complexity on that is a lot. There's a lot of different things that you'd have to test and go after, different stages in the journey for different segments. And if you don't have a fast-paced way and the tools to manage that complexity, you're just not going to make progress. So it is about thinking through a war room operation where you're constantly going through sprints where every 2 to 4 weeks you're trying to tackle a range of stuff in really fast 24-hour cycles. And what the lighting company had to do was set up 5 different cells to tackle different aspects of the journey, because all of them had different questions about what's the right content, what's the right contact moment, how do we steer somebody, and running those tests on almost a daily basis and a fast cycle was key to them making progress in any kind of reasonable time. The other side of this, if you're going to do the test, is to get the responses fast. And this is where I think marketing technology needs to play a smarter role. Because in most cases, many companies have a lot of reports and a lot of data coming in, but it's a lot of reports and a lot of data. It's not clean, it's not visualized, it's not tied to the exact tests and the things you want to learn. And that takes some work to really craft the visualizations that you want so that you can fuel that war room. And very few companies really take the time to actually work on that and tune that, match the tags, match the visualization, match the targets, what are the exceptions to what they're actually doing in the war room. And they leave the data and reports. So tuning that is going to enable you to have a way faster cycle time than you ever did before. Then there are some other kinds of tools that you can use to understand how well your experience is actually flowing. There's a tool that we use called NorthPage. And NorthPage is an artificial intelligence engine that has loaded into it thousands and thousands of examples of best practices of different kinds of UI and tagging and technology structures that all affect the flow of the customer journey. And what NorthPage does is it essentially attacks the flow of your customer experience from search, from social, down into your site, down through the whole buying flow of your site to look for any points at which things are really not optimized. Bad tags that lead to poor SEO, content that should be above the fold, that's now below the fold, and there's thousands of different things that they can uncover. And so they can come up with all kinds of different tools that can then, all the results that compare you with the competition and actually provide a ranking, and then underneath that, a whole drill down of what could be an endless punch list of things to start fixing. And we use this a lot. It's another kind of tool out there. I'm not sure it cleanly fits in the structure that MarTech uses, but it's a good one that we have found to have an outside-in way of looking at where customer flows start to have failures. There's also new kinds of analytics that you can use to understand customer journeys in their totality. So a lot of companies now are professing to give you omni-channel views. That's the whole thing now, omni-channel. We track across all the different channels. Well, the reality is it's kind of tough to actually take that omni-channel view, stitch it together, date stamp what somebody is doing, time stamp it down actually to the second, and track the flow across channels of what they've done. There is a tool that we use called ClickFox that goes through all one's different channels and creates a lightweight metadatabase of all the different customer interactions and tracks them and connects them with date stamps to actually show the flow of what happens on the way to the customer having some kind of outcome. So what are the things that happen that would lead them to call a call center when they should have been able to do something online? What are the things that lead to a successful cross-sell? What are the things that lead to a bad rating in customer satisfaction? And it generates charts, and I'm not going to walk through the details of this, but charts like this that start to show the flow of different journeys and which are the dominant ones that lead to certain outcomes. In this case, this is an example from a telecom company looking at what leads to low customer satisfaction on the bottom. And what you see is that what led to low customer satisfaction is having talked to an agent after having a bad experience trying to get through the interactive voice response. Everyone hates those. But originally, these people were online and trying to get something done. And they couldn't. And then they had to go through all of this. So tracking it down to the actual page, the specific page for those things, and then working through a process in the war room to fix all of that, and having these pop up every single day by going through where are the breakdowns, by looking at this kind of journey analytics, this can fuel a war room that can constantly spot things and fix them across the journey. And when you do that, you find surprising things. So in most cases, there's a belief in the marketplace that the faster you can get somebody all the way down through an application, a moment to buy, the more likely you are to convert them. But we actually found that for credit cards, for example, that's not the case. And an example here, and you can only get this if you look across the whole journey. So 30% of people are actually going to a product page first before they go to an application. And when they do that, and they actually start the application after hitting a product page, 33% of them actually end up, actually this isn't credit cards, it's checking accounts, open a checking account either online or offline in a branch. And that contrasts to 70% who are trying to be shuffled super fast right into an application, and only 13% of those actually in the end convert. And when you look at the numbers purely online, it looks like the application, the people who start the checking application, right away look better. But when you look at it in totality, you see that people who are actually able to learn about the product, understand it, get more confidence about what they're buying, they're the ones who are actually going to convert. So often when you start looking at total journeys, and you're not just optimizing purely for the online channel, you start to see different kinds of data that leads you to understand more about what the customer is really trying to do. In order to do this, you need technology architecture, and I don't need to tell you guys about technology architecture. I mean, this is what this whole conference is about. But I'm amazed at how few executive suites really understand their customer management technology architecture. And so a very simple way, and I know this is different than the amazing chart that Scott has put together, but a very simple way to talk about technology architecture with your executives is to say, in the middle, what do we have in terms of core customer data, analytics, content management? What do we have for powering our own channels? What do we have for operating our paid channels? And how does it all fit together? And what's the coverage? And what do we have? What are our gaps? What works together? How does that enable us to do the kinds of use cases we want to have in order to drive our marketing? And if the executive suite isn't on board with this and understands this, you'll never really get the license to even do a business case for investment. And a lot of the stuff that most of you guys want to do is not going to happen in an enterprise company if the executives are not really understanding the overall technology architecture, even at a light level. From an organization standpoint, it also means shifting some of the emphasis away from traditional functional silos and into more of these war room-like Scrum teams. And in more of the companies we're working with, we're seeing Scrum teams becoming a formal part of the structure to go after certain journeys, constantly optimizing them with some kind of journey manager above them to manage a set of teams that are going after ongoing improvements. So for the lighting company, there was a journey manager about sales. There were 5 different Scrum teams working on different pieces of this with different folks from different functions working together in a constant iterative cycling. And they are now estimating that they're likely to move 40% of their headcount in marketing, sales, and IT into this kind of Scrum team mode. So that's a huge shift in the organizational structure. So if you've been following the little acronyms, the letters that I had at the beginning of these slides, you can see my cute little acronym here for tying some of this together. So when you think about what it takes to make all of this happen, it's about, first off, thinking about strategy. What are the journeys that matter? What's the heat map for different segments of the spots in the journeys that are going to really make a difference? How do we rethink the workflow to be able to be faster cycle with the right kind of reports and data to fuel a constant engine of experimentation and change? What are those data engines, and increasingly journey-based data engines like a ClickFox, that can help us understand the end-to-end flow and analyze that as an entire journey? Do we know the architecture that we have? Do our executives know that? Do we have all the pieces we need? And how are we going to get the dialogue going to fill in the gaps? And in order to make that happen, are we open to new kinds of operating structures that are going to take advantage of the ability to move rapidly and fast? I'm going to close quickly with a short personal anecdote of a story that happened to me. So about a year or so ago, my wife and I were thinking about buying solar panels for our house. And we got a physical, snail mail, piece of mail that said, your house would be a terrific candidate for solar panels. Okay, I was a little skeptical, but opened it up and there was a customized URL on a piece of paper. Typed that in, boom, Google Earth, air shot image of our house with solar panels superimposed on top of it, with a calculation down the side of what those solar panels would actually generate based on the number that would fit on our roof, the orientation of our house, and the tree obstruction. They got data from Trulia that estimated the square footage of our house, and then from that estimated what the actual savings would be of energy from solar. Click to talk. Clicked, went right through to talk to somebody, an inside salesperson who knew exactly who we were, had all of our information right there up on the screen, and was able to push the dialogue forward, gave us the names of a couple of folks in our area who had already done business with Sungevity, who is the company involved here. We emailed them, got great reviews back, then contacted Sungevity again. They emailed us a set of different options for leases and had a little video that helped us understand how the different leases worked. And the whole transaction was completely done online. All of the installation was managed through messaging back and forth. And basically, Sungevity got us, without us ever looking at a competitor, to buy from them. They completely shaped, rerouted, diverted our customer journey. And on an ongoing basis, I mean, that experience, as I'm doing right now, defines the brand. And for essentially a commodity, it has changed the way we thought about what matters for a brand like that. They're the second fastest growing solar panel company. They've entered whole new markets. They're the leader in the Netherlands and Australia. And the irony is they don't own any solar panels. All of this is contracted. They have a network of people who do the installation. They have someone else do the financing. And so all they are is they manage the experience flow and the customer information. That's what we're talking about, is thinking about that end-to-end journey and managing that all the way through. So in closing, let me just give you a quote. The seeker embarks on a journey to find what they want, and they discover along the way what they need. Your customers have journeys in mind. They have goals. They have things that they want to do, but they don't necessarily know the best way to get there. You can create the journey for them. Manage that journey, optimize it, fix it, shape it to your advantage. The key is just mobilizing explicitly to do that, which is a shift in strategy and operations.